If you've been keeping up with the news, you might remember the dissent or seeming dissent within the Democratic Party over remarks made by both Newark Mayor Cory Booker and former President Bill Clinton regarding Mitt Romney's involvement and record with Bain Capital. Both of them seem to be somewhat off message in terms of the Democratic narrative. For weeks now, President Obama's campaign message has hammered the point that supposedly Romney is not good for business and not good for America, using Bain as the focal point. You could say that was odd, the discrepancy in the messages. But what was more odd, arguably, was that this week, former Florida Governor Jeb Bush went rogue as well, you could say, just with a Republican twist. He said Republicans needed to change their ways to be more like the late Ronald Reagan. Needless to say, that did not go over well within the GOP. Joining me now to put some context to Jeb Bush's subtext is Deroy Murdock, Scripps Howard News Service columnist and contributing editor with the National Review Online. Deroy, my friend, it is good to speak to you.
Mr. Kelly, how are you? Good to talk to you.
Doing fine. And you know what? I had an email from a listener last week who was saying I should have more conservatives on and requested you by name, not knowing or understanding that I had been dialoguing with you for weeks in the hopes of bringing you on this program because we had worked together in different capacities over the years. And I'm so pleased to be able to finally have you on the program.
My pleasure. Good to know I've got a fan or two out in California.
We got two.
Two, okay. And my mom and dad. That would add up to
right,
four,
the three
right?
then. So to the business at hand, Deroy, Jeb said that Ronald Reagan would have been more about the business of finding common ground. Some may not remember you worked on both the 80 and 84 campaigns for Ronald Reagan. How right or how wrong is Jeb Bush?
Completely wrong. I think this is a great opportunity for Jeb Bush and his brother and his dad and the entire Bush clan to go away once and for all.
Wow.
I don't think anybody in American public life needs to take any instructions from those folks. I think that his brother, I described in a piece right before he left the White House, I called him G.W. Bush a mitigated disaster. I would have said unmitigated except for the fact that we were not struck by al-Qaeda domestically again after 9/11. I give him full credit for that. I appreciate the Bush tax cuts. I'm a fan of the now, unfortunately, thanks to Barack Obama, deceased D.C. school voucher bill or program that was signed by G.W. Bush. So he did a few good things. Other than that, I think his administration was a disaster. Enormous spending, brand new programs, the prescription drug benefit, an increase in federal hiring, regulations. It's illegal to purchase a regular Thomas Edison 100-watt light bulb thanks to G.W. Bush. And then you have his father who basically on paper should have been the greatest American president ever. You had a guy who was a two-term member of the U.S. House of Representatives. He was a Republican national chairman. I believe he was ambassador to the United Nations. He was the director of Central Intelligence. He was the ambassador to China. And then he spent 8 years as vice president next to Ronald Wilson Reagan. You would have thought this guy would be stellar. He basically got in after Reagan left and just dropped the ball, increased spending, started the whole Kyoto global warming process. All that started in Rio 20 years ago under George H.W. Bush. And, of course, read my lips, no new taxes, followed by read his lips, new taxes. So I don't think we need to take any lessons from any member of the Bush family. I'm sick and tired of them. I can't stand their consigliere, Karl Rove. And I just wish that Jeb Bush, having embarrassed himself with this comment, maybe that can be the exit line and they all can go away and leave us alone once and for all.
You made two very distinct points. You talked about the Reagan legacy and also the Bush legacy from H.W. all the way down to George W. and Jeb Bush. So speaking in those terms, every Republican candidate has tried to in some way attach him or herself to the Reagan legacy. Mitt Romney seems to be the furthest of all the candidates away from that legacy. How do conservatives view him in regards to Ronald Reagan?
Well, I guess at this point, since he is going to be the nominee, I think there's probably, some kind of cautious optimism with all of our fingers crossed and hoping that either he has learned something, will learn something, or at least will be surrounded by advisors who have learned something. I think most movement conservatives are a bit suspicious, at least, of Mitt Romney. I certainly have written and said a lot of very, very critical things about him. I think all of us basically are so completely fed up and disappointed with Barack Obama. We're happy to see him leave, and if Mitt Romney gets in, it's hard to imagine him being any worse. But we hope, of course, that he will be a limited government, limited spending, tax-cutting type of Republican like Ronald Reagan. and not a big government, big spending, brand new program, entitlement launching Republican like Daddy Bush, Baby Bush, and I imagine if he got into the White House, probably Brother Bush as well.
You mentioned that Barack Obama, at least in your estimation, has been a disaster and has not been good for the country. Let me ask you, and this kind of refers back to Jeb Bush's remarks. I can sit here and say that I can give the president credit for saving GM. I can give him credit for killing Osama bin Laden, but I can also criticize him for chasing after health care when arguably the economy needed to be addressed first. I think there's credit and blame to be meted out in regards to Barack Obama. Can you give President Obama any credit for anything?
Well, I would give him credit for tracking down and killing Osama bin Laden, no question. I'm happy to see him dead and fed to the sharks. He's now at the bottom of the ocean or maybe devoured by some man-eating fish at this point. That's a good thing, and I think every American applauded when we turned on the news and heard the surprise, very good news that bin Laden had been killed. I think, unfortunately, a lot of that, some of the gleam has come off of that because of this sort of beating of his chest that's been going on with all of these leaks that have been coming out of the administration. I remember watching on TV just a couple of weeks ago, one of the news channels had a story about the actual model that the Navy SEALs used before they did the assault. They had a physical, like an architectural model of bin Laden's home, and you could see the way it was laid out. You could see where the garage was, where the cars were parked, where the bushes were, and all the trees were done to scale, etc. And it was a lovely model, quite beautiful. And I thought to myself, why on earth am I seeing this? Why are we talking about this? 10 or 20 or 30 years from now, whenever it is we, I hope, win the war on terror, the Smithsonian can have a big exhibit on how we won the war on terror, and that model can be there where we all can admire it. This should not be on television now. We shouldn't be hearing about how it was a doctor over in Pakistan helped us get the DNA from bin Laden. That guy now, because he was outed by all the people blabbing in the Obama administration, he's now in jail in Pakistan rather than a free man. So I think that when we talk about the bin Laden killing, as much as we applaud it, I think this now has gotten tied into this leak story, which of course is very negative for Obama. So I give him credit for the bin Laden killing. I would say that the other thing that is a positive thing, he seems to be a very good family man from all I can gather, and I'd hope that his general demeanor and presentation would be something that would help a lot of young black kids growing up get the sense they don't have to follow hip-hop culture and rap culture and walk around with their pants falling off their rear ends, and instead can be presentable and be professional and successful. It might be a bit too early to tell if he's having that effect, but if he is, that's certainly a good thing. Beyond that, in terms of his spending programs and his regulatory programs, Obamacare, the fact that our indebtedness is now about 50% higher than it was when he came to office, all of these are very negative things, and he can blame Bush as much as he wants, but those are Barack Obama's budget requests, not George W. Bush's budget requests that he was introducing as president, and he has to take full responsibility for that.